Red Pill Relationships, number 13, Family of Origin.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I am Paul Elam with a voice for men and an ear for men.com and many other things that I won't mention. And I am here with my good friend Tom Golden from MenAreGood.com. Hey, Tom, how you doing, bud?
Paul, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. And today we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, and that is the FOO, the FOO, better known as Family of Origin. And I can't personally think of a more important topic for men to get very acquainted with in their lives in terms of understanding themselves, because your family of origin, whether we want it to be true or not, your family of origin forms who you're going to be. And if you're going to be something different than your family of origin stamps you out to be, then it's going to require conscious work on your part to make changes. There's no way that you can stay unconscious of the influences of your family of origin and then have a truly self-directed life. Would you say that's fair, Tom?
I think that sums it up pretty well, Paul.
I know for me personally, it's been just a hugely important part of my life, that work.
Yes.
And that work is sometimes painful. It is sometimes very uncomfortable. It is also very freeing. It releases you from, because look, family of origins all have some measure of dysfunction. Tom, stop me anytime I'm wrong here. Have you ever met a fully 100% functional family with no dysfunction whatsoever?
Doesn't exist that I know of.
And that, I'm sure, given your experience, involves having met lots and lots of families.
Lots.
Yeah, me too. Lots and lots of them.
Yeah.
And I've never met one that was fully functional. There is some forms of pain and hurt in childhood that come from all families from the dysfunction. They partially shape who we are. And part of the objective to me in red pill life is not just to look at our relationships with women, look at gynocentrism, look at hypergamy, look at the misandry in the world against men, and learn how to resist that and to push that stuff away and out of your life. It's also to take the scripts that you were given by your family of origin and to evaluate them and then to choose, do I want this to be me? Because, you know, your families can give you really great stuff too. And once you examine the script and you say, okay, that works for me. Like, you know, let's say your father taught you to be strong and stoic, and that happens to work a lot in your life. Hey, you can employ that script consciously, and now you're doing it of your own volition. You're not doing it just as an automaton that was programmed by your family. You're doing it because you've chosen to, and that makes all the difference in the world.
Yes.
And on the other hand, your father might have taught you to suppress all your feelings and to be so stoic that you can't acknowledge your own pain. And in examining that, you can decide, you know what, I don't want that to be me. I want to be able to look at my pain, have boundaries in life, look at when they're violated, and do something about it. So you get the point here is that your family forms your worldview. From the time you're an infant coming out of the cradle, you see the world through your parents. They tell you, they're your major interpreters of what the world is. And so you learn to see it through their eyes. And the process of doing family of origin work is truly the process of learning to see the world through your eyes.
Yes, exactly.
And so for me, this is a real big part of what I call red pill living, is that you've got to get there's other factors you got to get right with women, but it's really important to understand your family of origin, where you came from, so that you can have a much better idea of where you're going and how to get there consciously instead of unconsciously.
Yes, and I think,
What do you think, Tom?
the family of origin stuff, also, the family tells us who we are. You know, they define us in a lot of ways. Oh, you're selfish. Oh, you are too nice, or all kinds of things that we pick up from the time we were, 0 years old until we're 10, 15 years old, that we start to just swallow and digest. And that becomes what we think we are. And what Paul's talking about is making a huge shift in thinking and taking an adult mind and looking at yourself consciously and saying, what am I? Am I what my parents said I am, or am I what I think I am right now? And really going with what you think you are. Because, man, we all get moved in one direction or another by our parents. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative. But no parent is a perfect person. And because our parents are imperfect, they're going to pass on to us their own imperfections. So you can kind of gauge the amount of crap that you're going to have to put up with by how developed your own parents were. You know, if they were abusive, you're going to probably have a lot of stuff to go through. But if they weren't abusive, you're still going to have things to go through because they weren't perfect people. They've got stuff they're going to put onto you because they weren't able to really digest it themselves, you know? And I think Bradshaw says, Paul, you know, the whole thing boils down to, can the parent love the child for who they are as they are? You know?
And to some degree or another, no parent can.
Exactly. And this doesn't mean that you let Johnny do whatever he wants to do. No, you can love Johnny and still tell him, no, Johnny, you're not to do that or not to do this. You know, that has nothing to do with limits. It has to do with perception of who people are, you know? And so we get these things built into our biocomputers that we automatically think we are that. And sometimes they really need to be rechecked. What Paul's talking about is just rechecking, saying, okay, is this what I think I am or not? Because, man, a lot of this stuff, it took me a long time to go through some of it. And you don't believe it for a while. It's like, nah, that's bullshit. You know, I'm blah, but I was wrong. But it took me a while before people, you know, a lot of people would give me feedback. Oh, this is all blah, blah, blah. Ah, that's bullshit. And it takes a while to soften that part up and to believe in yourself enough to say, oops, maybe they're right.
Oh, man, I don't think you can overstate what Tom just pointed out in terms of your parents or your family forming your view of who you are.
Yes.
I talked about the outside world and what the world was, but the real critical point here is what Tom pointed out, is that your family shapes what you believe about yourself.
Yes.
And if you have dysfunctional parents, and we've already agreed that everybody's parents are dysfunctional to one degree or another. Some parents are very dysfunctional. Some parents shame and humiliate their kids, tell them they're inadequate, tell them that, you know, no matter what they do, it's not good enough. And then you have mothers who don't like the father and tell the son, you're just like your father, after having talked for 3 days incessantly about how bad and terrible the father is. Then she turns to the son and says, you're just like your dad. And what he ends up growing up believing, he's bad.
Yes.
People enter therapy all the time because they believe there's something terribly wrong with them, and it's nothing more than an idea that's been planted in their minds by their family.
Yes.
And this plagues people all across this culture, because what do? We tend, unless we have a moment where we stop and look at our own lives and dissect things, we tend to act automatically.
Right.
We just march through life like the automaton, you know, following orders. Yes, I'm bad. Okay, I've accepted that. And then, but it feels bad and shamed. And next thing I know, I need to reach for a drink to kill some of the pain. Right. I reach for some drugs. Right. I reach for some sort of sexual acting out. There could be all kinds of ways to handle and manage that. And our parents, God bless them, they do their best. I mean, one of the ways it's really important to point out in this discussion, to me, Tom, this is not about blame. It's not about blaming your parents for what's wrong with you. Understand, your parents went through this too with their parents and their parents before that. If we're going to play the blame game in this, we need to go back multiple generations and find, you know, the first alcoholic in your line or the first dysfunctional person. Lots of luck with that. And then we can blame them. This is about responsibility, though. It's about understanding whatever your parents did. Okay, they had it rough growing up. They did, in general, what most parents do, which is the best they could with what they had to work with. That's true about most parents. They really do try to do their best.
Yes.
And a lot of times their best is really fucked up.
Yes, exactly.
And you have to be able to carry both of those ideas in your head at the same time. That on one side of the coin, they did the best they could do. On the other side of the coin, what they did wasn't that good in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And if you can embrace both of those concepts at the same time, you can avoid a lot of unnecessary raging and anger at your parents as the so-called source of your problems. Because in the end, whose responsibility is it to fix us, Tom?
Now who would that be, Paul?
That might be our responsibility, Tom.
The old US, us.
And that in family of origin work, and I'm sure Tom can confirm this, one of the places people get stuck when they're actually doing this work and they're trying to gain the insight is, and this is one of the things about psychotherapy that is an inherent risk, is that you can get caught up in the anger at the abuse and you can rage the rest of your life.
Yep.
If you want to.
Yeah, you can get stuck there.
You can get very stuck there.
And it's an easy place to get stuck, because you feel so justified. And in a way, you are justified,
That's part of the problem.
I know.
Come by it honestly,
Exactly. I mean, if you're abused, you should be pissed off,
Absolutely. And you should have the right and the opportunity, and it's a healthy thing to vent that anger.
Yep.
But it's also important to ask yourself, what do you want to do with this anger long term?
Yes.
What role do you want that anger to play in your life?
Yep.
Because it can become a cancer. And it doesn't change what they did to you.
Yep.
Being angry at them is your way of, sort of vomiting out the trauma of the abuse.
Yeah, nice.
But it doesn't change what they did. So you can vomit out, and then you think about what they did, and the next thing you know, you need to vomit out again. Yeah. And you may need to do that a few hundred or a few thousand times until you're ready to move on. But Tom, one of the things I think my clients will get the most frustrated with me about is when I tell them that if they want long-term healing, they have to forgive the people that hurt them.
Yeah. You can't get too far unless you start with the forgiveness.
And so,
but that's a long way away. I mean, you got to start with the anger. You got to start with being pissed off, and you got to honor that and acknowledge it and say, yeah, here I am pissed off. And that's all right. That really is okay. But consider that like part of the movement, because you're moving towards this place of forgiveness. But you can't get to forgiveness just by smiling and going, oh, it's okay. No, it doesn't work. You got to be pissed off. I mean, that's why it's good to have, someone around who knows how to deal with your anger, who knows how to deal with your pissed offness. And, if that's a therapist, that's great. It could be a friend. It could be a group of friends,
Yeah, and again, that's not a pitch for psychotherapy. What Tom's saying is true. Some janitors make the better psychotherapists than many PhDs that I've met in my life.
Man.
Getting somebody that understands your anger is legitimate, because what happens many times when we start this work, we're surrounded in life by people who haven't done that work. And then next thing saying, I just figured out my mom was a bitch. She was an abusive, horrible bitch. People will actually say, you shouldn't talk that way about your mother.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's one of the things you have to contend with is finding somebody who has enough sense and maybe enough self-awareness to know that when you say my mother was a bitch, to be able for them to say, tell me about it.
Yes, exactly.
What happened to you?
But Paul, very few women are going to be able to handle the anger of a man.
Yeah. And
this guy, I got to tell you a story about a friend of mine who ran a workshop for people all over the world. And the last day of the workshop, he got this call from South America where this guy's father, his brother had died. So my friend had to go and tell the guy, I'm sorry to tell you, your brother died. And the guy tells him, he's South American, he says immediately, get some cloth and meet me in the parking lot, with 7 men. So they got 7 guys together. My friend was going, what the hell? Got 7 guys together, go out in the parking lot. The man instructs them how to hold him. And they held him from the legs and from the back and the arms and everything. And then he put that cloth in his mouth like that, and he started to struggle. God damn it, he was cussing, he was screaming, he was just fucking pissed off. My friend was going, oh shit, what have I done? What am I going to do? About 5 minutes later, the guy fell into a puddle on the parking lot floor crying. You know, he needed that movement. He needed that anger. He needed 7 men to hold that shit back and to contain him in order to, boom, let that stuff come out. And when it came out, then he went into a place of sadness. I've seen that happen over and over again, Paul. You know, with men, when we really can get angry, the sadness starts to come up, you know? And
That's so important.
We're moving through it. You know, you're moving through it when that happens.
And the guys were containing him, but they were really, what they were doing was letting him express.
Yes, the containment, that's containment means holding him so that he can be able to express. It was contained space, in other words. It was a space where he was contained. He was able to do what he needed to do. You will not find many therapists who can do that.
And what Tom said is true too. It's difficult to find women.
Women are afraid of men's anger. They're petrified that he's going to jump up and bop him right in the head.
And women also tend to think collectively, oh, you're mad at one woman. I'm sorry, but this is, we're dealing in truth here.
Yeah.
If you're angry at your mother, if your mother was an abusive person, there is a tendency in women to want to defend other women. And there's a tendency in men to defend other women too. Gynocentrism is an equal opportunity destroyer.
Oh, baby, it sure is.
But you need somebody in your life that will let you be who you are.
Yes.
Because that first acknowledgement, when you go from walking through life thinking I was a bad kid, I'm a mistake, and then you realize that was something that was done to you, that it wasn't really you, that it was something done to you by other people, the anger from that can be incredibly intense, and it needs to be.
Yes, yes.
And a good therapist will help you go from I'm a mistake to there were some really big fucking mistakes made against.
Yes, exactly.
And that process is an emotional one, but I would argue, somebody once said the greatest tragedy in the world is a life lived unexamined.
Yeah.
That if you go from cradle to grave, never knowing who you are, only living some script that was handed to you. I saw a meme on the internet today, was great. It said, tradition is nothing more than peer pressure from dead people. I love that.
That's good. That's good.
And we do have traditions like you don't talk ill of your mother, or you don't speak ill of the dead.
Yeah.
Or you don't badmouth your family. And all those come into play. Yeah. And if you've already been trained to believe that you're a mistake and that you're the one that's wrong and that it's all your fault, then boy, what about the shame that comes with standing up to all that?
Yeah.
It can get very intense. And sometimes it's the anger that'll get you over that shame enough to express it.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So what can men do about this, Paul?
One, I think, again, this is where I do find a competent therapist is a good thing to do, especially if there was a lot of trauma from the family of origin, if there was a lot of abuse.
Yeah.
But in the absence of that, friendships or extended family members that are willing to be tolerant of who you are, it's real easy to measure. Is if you say to somebody, my mother used to humiliate me as a child. If they say you shouldn't talk that way about your mother, that's not your huckleberry.
Oh, you deserved it.
Yeah, you deserved it, which you will get from some people. Some other guy who was shamed and humiliated and still thinks it's his fault is likely to tell you it's your fault too. Exactly. Misery loves company.
Precisely. You got to find someone who's fairly developed, someone who's let go of their shit, and sometimes that can be the janitor. Sometimes it can be the guy who's at the grocery store. Who knows? So get to
I've heard of people, honestly, Tom, that went through and like put a finger on a page or threw a dart at a phone book and called strangers and said,
Huh.
I need to tell somebody about my life. And
Huh.
a lot of times people would hang up. Sometimes people would say, okay, I'm not doing anything, and listen to them.
How about that?
That can be
Interesting.
a powerful tool,
Oh man, really?
to tell it to a stranger.
Yes.
If people in 12-step programs have sponsors for this, and if you're in a 12-step program and your sponsor doesn't think you should speak ill of your mother, you need a new sponsor.
Yeah.
But find somebody, and this is one of the big things for me. The onus is on you.
Yes.
When Tom asked, what can men do? We need to talk about what men can do. Find somebody.
Yes.
Make that your object in life. Your objective in life is that you find somebody that you can connect to and be honest with about your background, who won't shame you, who won't tell you to shut up, who won't get tired of listening to you.
And that person may be a sibling, Paul. So don't count your siblings out. Check out, see if you've got siblings who are ready to talk about this kind of thing. And if you do, man, that's a boon, because they know the territory. They know what you went through because they went through the same crap.
Yeah, if you've got another scapegoat in your family, they'll listen to you. Absolutely. But no, that's a real well. And then if you're talking about a family hero as a child, they're probably not going to want to listen. So you've got to evaluate some. But the point is, you've got to do this. You've got to figure out a way to get connected with another human being that can hear your story and that can let you vent.
Yes.
And you've got to be responsible for understanding, no matter what you feel in the process. If you feel awkward about it, if you feel shame about it, this is one of the few times I'm going to say man up. You need to man up and plow through that shame and through that hesitance and understand you deserve to tell your story.
Yes.
And to remember that if you look back at your childhood and you were shamed and humiliated,
I'll get it.
That was wrong. What's that?
Nothing. I was kidding.
May have to cut that part because I had a Skype call. Somebody tried to come in.
It's all right. We won't put them in here.
Okay. Man. But anyway, where was I? You've got to find something, guys. The family of origin work is exactly that. It's work. It's stuff you have to shoulder to get done. On the other side of it, though, there is nothing in this world like breaking free of those scripts. I can't describe it.
It's a huge relief. It's a huge relief. You won't know the relief until you do it. It's really quite amazing. The other thing you can do, guys, is once you find someone, start writing out your own story. Write out just for yourself, email something to yourself, and just start writing your story out. What happened to you? What people told you were. Write it out. Then maybe share that with this other person, because that can really help. Here's what happens. When you write something out, it puts you into a different space in your brain. So different memories pop up. When we write something, it brings up different memories. Then, once you've written it, read it out loud to someone, because the reading out loud to someone puts you in a different space altogether again. And so we find these different spaces, writing by yourself, reading it to yourself, reading it out loud. All of those different things do different stuff to us. And it starts to bring up old memories. It starts to bring up old crap, and you're letting it go. Because, the whole thing about telling the story, Paul, that's the PTSD is basically healed by being able to tell the story within a safe place. If you tell the story and you're feeling, terribly anxious or threatened or whatever, it's not going to help. But telling it in a safe place seems to help. And the Army, Paul, has this thing now where they say you have to tell the story 641 times, for an old war PTSD. And they say that's enough then to be able to put it to rest. But I haven't tried the 641 yet. But I do know that repeated telling of the story tends to help put that story in a place where you can kind of swallow it. Because when stuff's happened to us that we can't swallow, and that's PTSD. and the story doesn't have a place to go. It just sort of rolls around in your head, and you're at the grocery store, boom, it comes up. You're at the firing range, boom, it comes up. You're driving in the car, boom, it comes up. So you want to give that story a place. And this is what we're talking about today, finding another person who can hear it, being able to write it out. These are the kinds of things that are going to give that story a place to reside so that it becomes a part of your history, not a part of what's battering you in the present tense.
Man, that can't be overstated. So it becomes a part of your history.
Yeah. Your history is your history. That's all it is. And it's okay. And being okay with our history is what's going to help us be in the present moment and to be able to accept ourselves the way we are,
I'd like to also offer a word, Tom, of caution to people who are in 12-step programs. There's get into upsetting people about 12-step, because the proponents of 12-step programs are very enthusiastic about those programs. And I think that they're really good in a lot of ways.
Yes, they are.
They've helped a lot of people. One of the things to take caution with, though, is that when people are doing step work in 12-step programs, they'll be encouraged to write out a list of resentments.
Right.
Everything that they feel. And part of the writing that list is to talk about what was your role in developing that resentment.
Right.
Fuck that. When you're a child and you're abused, you don't have a role except as a victim. As an adult, it's a different story. We can talk about that all day long. Like I'm fond of saying, there's no victims, just volunteers. And I believe that fully for adults. I'm not talking about that. If a child is beaten or abused, the fault is with the parent. And to sit and say, what was my role in my father bashing me? If anybody in a 12-step program has you doing that, they're not helping you. And I need to say that. But that is one of the things, if your family of origin abuse has resulted in addictions and things like that, and you've sought help in 12-step programs, properly applied, those steps can do exactly what Tom and I are talking about.
Yeah, I agree, Paul. It's critical. You cannot have children think they're responsible for something, because that is their natural response. When children are abused, the first thing they think is, I did it. If I hadn't done X, Y, Z, this would not have happened. So they take that blame on themselves. They pile it on. So if you've got a program that says, well, how was your fault in this? That's bullshit. Kids don't have the responsibility. The adult is the adult. They're supposed to have the responsibility. And if they don't, it's not the kid's fault.
But you're right. Kids internalize abuse.
Oh.
They take it on. They blame themselves the same way they blame themselves when their parents divorce.
Yes.
Any kind of trauma in the family.
Yeah,
children, partly because of childhood narcissism, is that they think it's all about them. That's what children do. And that includes the bad and the good.
Yes.
So again, strong caution there. If you're dealing either from yourself or from outside yourself with the message of what did you do to cause this, that's exactly what we're talking about battling here.
The other thing people can do, Paul, with something like this is to just spend 15 or 20 minutes being quiet and not doing anything. Just turning into yourself and just being quiet and see what happens. A lot of times, if you can get quiet enough, there's a part of you that will kind of support you in a way. You'll start having thoughts and ideas about ways to go and do things. You'll start to have thoughts and ideas about things that might help you with this or that. And good things happen when we get really, really quiet. Solitude has been a huge, huge help for men for thousands of years. Take advantage of that, because it's powerful stuff, man. Just getting quiet, go fishing, go out in the woods hunting, who knows what. But just being quiet for a while can really help. Some guys golf and they do that. They won't say a word when they golf. They just go out and hit the golf ball, and they're just with themselves, But even better to just be by yourself, be quiet in a room that's darkened, and just let whatever's there come up in the solitude.
Finally, for me, a real important thing that men can do is make a commitment to themselves about their inner dialogue. We all have inner dialogues. We have oh, I fucked up. And, we don't say these things out loud. I fucked up. I always fuck things up. I make a mess up things. I can't do anything right. Just these tapes, these are the words of the father or the abusive mother coming through your mouth later in life, which is what happens with childhood abuse. But your willingness to stop for a minute and tell that inner critic, thank you for sharing. Now sit down and shut the fuck up. And to do that consciously, I'm serious, dead serious, that when those voices come up in your head, you're inadequate, you can't do this right, no woman's ever going to love you, blah, blah, blah. You're not lovable, you're not important, nobody cares about you. For you to stop everything in your life, I don't care what you're doing, take your hands off of it and stop for a moment and tell that inner critic to shut the fuck up. That they've got nothing to say that you're interested in hearing and you're tired of their lies.
Yes.
And then you move on and you do that over and over and over and over. And one day you'll find you're not having to do that very often.
Yeah. Yep,
because those voices do quiet down when you tell them to consciously.
And we've all got those voices, man. It's just, the Hindus talk about the mind is like a wild horse. It's like it just runs wherever it wants to run, anytime it wants to run. And the same thing is true with our minds. And we've all got these parts that are just yakking away, yakking. That's why solitude helps. First thing that happens is you start to go, oh shit, listen to the yakking, and that's when you got to say, no, thanks. It's like a salesman comes to the door at dinner time. We're having dinner. No, thank you. Fuck you. Yeah. You got to, it's just like Paul said, you've got to do that. You've got to tell it, no, thank you. Fuck you. Because these thoughts will keep coming back over and over again. They get reinforced. Let them go. Yeah. Speaking of letting go, you think that's enough for today?
I think that's enough for today. I want to include something on the end of this, though, very important. If you're watching this and you're not a patron of Red Pill Relationships, this is a one we're putting out there to the public.
That's right. I'd forgotten about that.
To encourage, more support. We love your support. First of all, thank you to all our patrons and our subscribe stars at Red Pill Relationships. We very much appreciate your support of this work. And occasionally we put one of these episodes out for everybody to watch. And we've covered a lot of other topics. We just covered, fighting to win. There's a whole list of them. This is what, number 13?
I think so.
Yeah, I think this is number 13 now. Yeah. So there's many other that we put out, and we're doing this once.
No.
Shit testing, saying no, having boundaries. I mean, we're covering what goes on. And it's real important to know that your family of origin work, if you want something with a profound impact on your relationship with women, can you imagine if you won't tolerate bullshit, negative voices from your parents echoing around in your head, how much nagging do you think you're going to put up with?
Exactly.
Because if you can beat that and develop those boundaries and have that self-respect that comes with doing the family of origin work, then it is 10 times easier to have boundaries and to take care of yourself with women. That's simple physics of psychology that works every time. If you can have boundaries about your family of origin, and if you're not going to be controlled by them, your likelihood of being controlled by a woman in a negative way is much, much less.
Yes. Amen to that.
So we do all these, and we're putting this one out, hoping you guys will follow one of the links below. Give us some support on Subscribestar. If you don't like Patreon, Subscribestar is there. They're a free speech platform. We're also on Patreon. You can go there and, for as little as $1 a month on either platform, you get all 4 of these programs per month.
Good deal.
I think it's a good deal.
I think it's a good deal.
Yes, it is a good deal.
And it's fun doing them. We've had a good time.
It is fun. I love these discussions because one of the things that we're doing that I think is so important is that we're having psychological discussions, mental health discussions for men that they will never get from the likes of the APA.
Right.
And all their acolytes.
I was just thinking just a moment ago, Paul, what if feminism had done this for women, had given them this kind of idea to take care of themselves for women
And the
instead of blaming,
responsibility to do it.
yeah, instead of blaming men. You know, where would we be today? I think we'd be in a much different place.
We'd be in a much different place. And we would be in a much different place if the mental health establishment was actually encouraging men's mental health instead of shaming and humiliating them like bad parents.
Amen to that.
So that's part of the what I call the holy agenda here, is to at least provide one place on this godforsaken planet where men can go and actually get information that's of benefit in their lives from mental health people.
Yeah, there you go.
And with that, I remind you that men are
good. Men are good, as are you. Yeah, come see us on Patreon or Subscribe Star. We'll see you, Paul.
Guys next time. Take care, Tom. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Turn the other thing off.
Why don't you turn the fucking thing off?